welcome Phil Straw as our guest speaker tonight. So Phil should be well known to a lot of people. Phil's been very prominent in New South Wales birdwatching community for a long time. A specialist consultant, and particularly with regards to shorebirds, where he's got international recognition and is an expert, heavily involved in the East Asia, Australia.
So tonight we're going on a 25,000 kilometre trip there and back. We'll talk about one particular shorebirds, but there are 18 residents and 36 species of migratory shorebirds in Australia, and what I've got is them at the bottom. And these are the different groups of birds. You've got sandpipers, snipe, plovers, curlews, and parrots, and of course godwits. Okay, the daily movements of shorebirds don't relate to day and night really, they relate to the tide. Because they'll be feeding at night and feeding during the day, and they'll be feeding and roosting at day at night. I won't go into the details, but at night time roosting is quite different to daytime. You'll see that birds roosting on the dike during the day, but there won't be any there at night. They have different things which I won't go into, but anybody who's been studying them will know that. So, and there's some feeding according to the tides. Smaller birds must feed for longer because they put on so much weight. And I said the roost size, as I said, varies whether it's all day or night. Okay. Spend most of their lives on inside mudflats, and it's a globally declining resource in Australia as well as anywhere else. Councils and everywhere else love to do coastal development. In China, it's the regional governments that do this, and the same sort of results. So, what do they eat? They probably eat worms, shellfish, and little crustaceans. These are particularly important for a lot of birds. They eat the juvenile shellfish. So you've got pippies and others which are much bigger, but godwits and not particularly feed on those. They're not to his business lab, he had them feeding on these shells, and then in about 32nd year, as the shell collapses, as the bird's very strong. Muscles of the stomach. So this is about I've got it. They feed on a lot of different types of prey, and it's a very adaptable bird. And so they feed on fairly firm mudflats, and some not so firm mudflats. And they carry away there. They actually, most shorebirds will pick up and sense prey through the tips of the bill. And you see the obviously preening and flight. That is. And this one, we measure the amount of fat on a scale from 1 to 5. Normally, when you're travelling around, you're not migrating, you don't put a lot of fat on because you've got to avoid birds of prey and everything else, and you can't do that. But once you're up flying up there, you can. So this one's at 5, and they put on 60% or plus of their body weight. Imagine what you do if you put that on, you'd be flat out walking around, wouldn't you? So, and they travel at 3 to 5 meters altitude. Once they get up that altitude, they're away from predators, most predators, birds of prey and everything else, and they'll stay at that height. So you'll see them when they're going off, leaving, they'll be taking that height and that V formation, they're going. Other times it's splitting around, which is at low altitude. Okay, the godwit's a perfect flying machine. It's like one of these new jets, isn't it? Where they go through the sky and everything else. But because their first flight was from 10,000 kilometres from the Hunter to the Yellow Sea between Korea and China. And that's non-stop, of course. It takes, for a week to fly that far. You can't really imagine flapping your wing for that length of time. There's one odd bird out here, there's what's wrong with them. grey plover. And just a bit on the migration. As I said before, fatten up 55 to 85% increase of weight to fuel the flight. That's for that purpose only. Increase in flight muscle mass to carry the loads. Before they take off, they need to be pretty tough birds. That thickens to enables the oxygen supply through the muscles. Decrease in the size of feeding organs. You don't feed anymore, so the stomach can be reduced during that period. Intestines, livers, kidneys, all that sort of stuff. And you get that back again when you get to the other end, and you switch over. It's incredible the physiology of birds. Decrease in flight. So what this is decreasing in flight as your bird's going along. The birds are using fat as you go along. You get lighter as they go along. But before they go, they must complete emulsion to breeding plumage if you're going to be a successful male. If this individuals complete this before departure, thus ensuring greater breeding success. Now, during the migration, they say they're decreasing weight because they're using up the fuel, up to 1 gram per fat per hour. The atrophy of the flight muscles as it decreases, it makes them less redundant. So it's heart muscles, and even that decrease, the engine of the cars are going to shrink as they're going along using up the fuel. Brain chemistry changes to allow non-stop flight for days on end. It takes a lot of willpower to do that, won't it? And evidence suggests they may be able to rest sections of their brain independently. We've always suspected that, but never thought about how they do it. This is a little bit about the flyway. You can see different species use different areas. The bartocorders are the northern shore. Actually, redneck students go as far as that as well. Little birds. And pteryx fibers down in the central Siberia area, and eastern Kuru, further south, but still in the subarctic regions. Right, and that's the figures for their return trip. And we've got this is out of date now. 13,000 the flight around. The late Mark Barter predicted all these things in his lifetime. He was one of the pioneers to work on the flyway with the Chinese. Working for Pesminko, he's travelled around, supposedly on business, but he spent a lot of time on tidal flats and other places on the way. And of course, this is a flight for a young juvenile who's never been across there before. And they're not guided by the adults. Okay, so here we go. The first stage from the Hunter to the, on its way to Alaska, flies via the north end of the Yellow Sea, a non-stop flight of 10,000 kilometres taking up to 8 days. Now, tighten your seatbelts. As you can see from there, passengers welcome aboard. This is your captain with an announcement. I am sorry I can't tell you if we'll reach our destination as per schedule. Expect some turbulence, large-scale habitat destruction, mass hunting, climate change on our north path, on our path. Enjoy the flight, and thanks for choosing the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, which is Flyway, the world's most endangered flyway. And you'll see why in a moment. And it was done by someone with a sense of humour from BirdLife. Mudflats there are huge, the biggest mudflats in the world. You see this stretch as far as the eye can see. Right back there, right back there, you've got, these are fishing nets, and these are shorebirds. Now, I'll show a couple more pictures there. You'll see the threats of this sea. Those nets are very visible. These are not very visible. The finer the mesh, the more dangerous they are to shorebirds. If you're into mesh netting, you know you catch a lot of birds with a very fine net. So, anyway, I won't get some details on that. And this is really where it's a heavy fishing area. These are little floating huts that the fishermen stay in overnight. They stay out there and go up and down with the tide, and when it's low tide to come out, collecting them. As I said, it's a tradition that's been going on for hundreds of years. These are people with little scrapers going along, getting shellfish from the surface for their own food and that. Outside, independent of that, are the fishing boats that work with the tide in shallow water and go up in and out of the tide. So there's a huge amount of fishing in the Yellow Sea, and a lot of these, while these people are doing this by hand, it's really sustainable. It's sometimes now they're using pumps and speeding up the process, so that will be a problem with sustainability. There's a fair bit of pollution. I'm going to talk about some of these things right at the end, actually. This is the third threats that we've gone through now. 4 is land reclamation. This is reclaimed land, what was tidal flats for fish farming. It has a big impact, but at least with fish farming, you do have a lot of prey for the birds to eat, and you've got roosting areas, which I'll show you a bit later on. But as long as it stays like that, it's not then taken over by other developments. Okay, so this is huge ponds here. This is one of our Chinese researchers from Beijing University. She was one that helped with my part many years ago, and there's a lot of work since then. So you can see how far the distance of that reclaimed mudflats compared to what we just see. And of course, reclamation for development. That's been going on a lot in China, a fair bit in Australia, but the present government in China is stopping a lot of this. Anything that's not legally reclaimed and built on is confiscated. And so they drew a red line down the whole coast of China, and they said there will be no illegal development, and the pollution I pointed out, with any pollution outlets must be registered and monitored. Now, this is in Korea. There's the infamous Simangung. Most of you haven't thought much about it, but a few years ago, a lot of us were very concerned about this reclamation. There was a seawall 33 kilometres long. Originally, it was going to be built for agricultural land, but then it was used for development. And I was invited to a Simangung Environment Conference some years ago. They were very proud of what they were doing for tourism. And there's a guy from the UK who works on, they work on also on what we call the setback scheme, that is using salt marsh to dissipate the energy of the oceans rather than sea walls. I talked about the Coorong, where I said we had a barrage built across the entrance to the Coorong there, one of the biggest ecological disasters in Australia. And there's a guy talking about tourism as well. So they're all very proud about this. At the end, the panel had to sort of make some good about this. And the first thing they said, we're very concerned about the Australian presentation. And a lot of people fought like hell, but it didn't succeed, it still went ahead. The engineers were talking about, very proudly about what they were doing here. But anyway, this is another threat, not as huge as the others, but this is the father and son shorebird trappers. They catch birds using decoys, sit down there and have a clap net. And they call the birds in, and as they come down to investigate the decoys, then it goes over. They then put the birds into a basket. Instead of going to the market in this case, they bring it on for the bird banders. And they're a lot more efficient at catching shorebirds than we are, like enemies. And you get them in the right numbers all the time. You're banding there, you don't have a sudden rush. Yeah.
So just explain how that works again.
I haven't got this. These got the poles that are missing it, have a clapnet. You know what a clapnet is?
Oh, right.
There's 2 poles with a net and it goes over them. And they pull on it, they have the side ropes and the tension. And he's jokingly talking to this member there. And this is on board their ship, or their boat, a fishing boat, banding. So that's our banding research station is mobile, it goes up and down with the tide and in and out where you want to. And they're the guys from Fulan University who've been doing studies ever since, and we get a few of their birds coming through the hunter.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of good now. This is we're working on coastline, trying to find out where the bridge sites are and feeding areas are. And we used to hire a small van, just the right width to be able to go along this. And this, a guy from Beijing, trying to guide us along so it didn't fall off the bloody bank. So that's just one of the challenges. Now, this is a shorebird roost. Now, you wouldn't go think it's as big as that in Australia. And these are huge fishery ponds or other sort of ponds, and you see right through there, this is a close-up. So there's a huge amount of birds there. So these sort of habitats are very useful to birds as well. But not the things, because there's no hunting now allowed in these places, and they have an undisturbed place to roost and feed. Okay, so we've got that far. Now we're going to go across the second stage. So we've gone from Australia up here. This is the Yellow Sea, and it's very productive mudflats. So you have 5 or 6 weeks to put on all the fat that they've used, because they're going to go here now where there's no food for larvals. And you have to be there for the period that the youngs are brought up and able to fly to the, out of the tundra. So this is the nesting area. This is Alaska, and it's a fantastic place to be. It's flat tundra. I was here in 2017, 50 years to the day for when I was the same latitude north in Greenland, but that's quite a mountainous area, nothing like this. So it's a big area. Fortunately, Donald Trump can stay long enough to build more airports and freeways and things to expand the oil industry he wanted to do, and it's stopped. So this is a very spongy sort of low vegetation. A lot of these things about this big, they're the Arctic trees, little birch trees and things like that. And that's as high as it grows, some of the grass is there. And they'll be feeding along these meres and such like. And now, there's one thing I'll point out, that there are some plants with berries and things on. Some adult shorebirds will actually feed on the berries, but there's not a lot for them. And godwits generally do that pretty much. Here's a nice male, which hasn't long arrived because he's still in good nick and plenty of good condition. And female there, sitting tight. There's a lady, Jeannie Baker, she wrote a book called Circle on the Bowerai subspecies of the godwit coming from Sydney and the Hunter. And she needed to know every detail about them. And she actually camped. It is through our fish and wildlife guys. You can't drive in, there's no boats in. They just dropped her off when they were doing their work, picked her up again when she came back. And so she... now, think about shorebirds, and shorebirds, almost without exception, do not feed the chicks. Not do most ducks, they just follow the parents along. So they arrive here, and the hatching date must coincide with billions of insects coming out of the ground over the tundra at the same time. And this is Elena Lapo in her younger days. She was in Brisbane just recently with a partnership. She's still busy. Unfortunately, her husband passed away a few years ago. But anyway, so That's summer in the Arctic. Would you like to go for the summer holiday? She's got a nice frame. And of course there are threats, predation, the Arctic foxes. That's the more typical of the coloration, but they can quite easily take it in without any resistance. Long-tailed skuas are also predators. Yeah, I found a pair of these in Greenland, and I've got some footage of it attacking my camera. I said, how did you manage that? Well, I'm standing with a cheek between my feet. And that was shown a few times on TV. But they are quite aggressive predators of small chicks. However, if you've got a good lemming year, which you do every now and then, it really takes off the pressure, the predation pressure of the shorebirds, because there's a lot of lemmings for the predators. So we get a better productive year in the years when we have a good lemming year. Right. Now, I'll just stop there for a moment. You've gone to your breeding area, you've laid your eggs, the chicks take a month or so to hatch, and then they get to full size, the chicks, the juveniles, by which time the females have already gone and left them with the males who look after them. Now think where they were feeding. Once they leave there, that's the last time they'll be eating that type of food. They'll be feeding on the mudflats. So the males move to the coast of Alaska and very productive mudflats, and that's where the young then learn to feed on a new type of food. And time they're getting really fully fledged, ready to go, the males leave. It's a bit like the mutton birds. They get left behind by the parents and they've got to follow by themselves. But that's the flight back, and that is the longest flight of any bird. I'm talking about flapping wings, not these birds that just sail around like this around months on end in the oceans. And I say that's a single flight. So here you are up there, you've got the world's biggest ocean here, and you know you've got to go this direction. And you're flapping your wing for how long? You heard the kids saying, are we there yet? And you don't know where you are, where you don't even know when you hit the coast. Because you hit the coast and then you see other flats and mud birds feeding, and they work up and down the coast, and the adults, been there before, will look for their own areas that they've been using in the past. And this birds that arrive now, just imagine the huge effort this has gone on. Adults have been going back and forth for up to 20 years or more, and they're very adept to do this, and the survival rate is very high. Juvenile, less experienced. This one here, that's how gaunt it is. That's what's in here. It was sitting on the mud here, just finding its own business, and the tide starts coming in, and it's just had to get up, stand up, and you can just about do it. That's how close you come to. So, let's say that.
Where was it?
That was in New Zealand. Phil Batley took those pictures, and you can tell the different types of speckly feathers on the wings under that there. So the juveniles, there's another behind. Right. Of course, many don't make it, especially the juveniles. It's like anything with birds, you delay a certain amount of eggs to replace themselves. Of course, all of them don't supply, otherwise they'll have redundance. But anyway, they have 3 or 4 eggs, so they need to have a pretty good survival rate. Okay, back to Australia, or to Australia for the third time, the juveniles. We've got lots of habitat disturbance of steer stretch shorebirds in Australia, as most of you will probably know. The shorebirds cannot put enough fat for the journey in Australia. They don't migrate. If they don't migrate, we don't have recruitment. And this is the thing if we're cutting it across to the government and everything else. They're doing the developments here, oh, they'll go somewhere else and feed. And if the birds are not one thing they won't take off if they're not capable of going there. They don't go along and suddenly fall in the sea. Some of them nearly make it over the juveniles. The third one, feeding areas, chased by dogs, kept away from feeding areas. Jet skis, kind of surfing in Easter. Kind of surfing school looks like a bloody big bird of prey. Sites of international port for migratory shorebirds around Australia are responsibility managed by state conservation agencies. Well, those sites are important, it's not important to put forward by the Australian government, that's on behalf of the states. And that's their only involvement. They're not really involved with site managers because the Australian government don't know these. So, there's about 200 sites around Australia that we know about migratory shorebirds. We've got 25 sites of flyaway networks, sites of importance, and more Ramsar sites. Ramsar sites are not just for birds, or it was primarily for birds many years ago, and that's for many other attributes, but the flyaway network sites are just for migratory birds, particularly shorebirds, in Australia that is. Anyway, I'm working with colleagues at the East Asian Australia Flyaway Partnership to establish migratory bird site manager network to facilitate communication through the flyaway. I'm really looking now in Australia, but I've got this presentation, but my next one that goes on from this from other places. Working with the site managers in Australia, we need a network of site managers to work together because no one else is helping them. The Commonwealth government is, and most of the states at this moment are flat strapped, they're out of funds. No one's putting conservation at the top of the ladder in Australia, but anyway. So a lot of this was very active many years ago. It slowed down a lot to make it. A lot of people think of wetlands as wastelands, as they did in those days. And this is a big issue. People say, oh, they don't hurt the birds, they're just chasing seagulls. Now, these birds are trying to put on fat. They feed during the low tide, they're trying to roost at high tide. Every time these birds fly around for an hour or two, they're using up those reserves. This guy quite innocently is fishing here. It happened to be a major roost site. So, politely told him about it and he was quite receptive, but a lot of these things happen. Okay, this is Botany Bay. This area in the northwest of Botany Bay, this is where the Cook's River used to come out. And there's a tiny area which was used by, as a race course there, but you see there, there's little airfields from in the 1940s, that was all there was for the airport. But all these mud flats here, tidal flats here, particularly this estuary, a lot of the early ornithologists used to do lots of surveys. Unfortunately, didn't do counts. Lots of it. That's it. That's not today, but it's 1994. You've got the Cook's River that came up here, was diverted for the airport, and it comes down here, it's lined with rocks and not tidal flats. And this is Port Botany. Now, I don't have the pictures, but we have the port is expanded this way. This area was created habitat behind that as part of the conditions that they were allowed to build for the expansion, but I won't go into that. That's for another presentation. Okay, so that's the flight of the godwit. And shows you the times, distances, and so on. So, this is E7, the very famous female godwit. She did this whole flight, and we were ecstatic when we got all this information. And that's the thing you can deal with, so satellite tracking. Before that, you had metal number bands. You're lucky if a hunter who shot one would take it to the vending office in that country, and the recovery rate was quite low. Then the colour bands, and then the flags, which have the numbers on now. And a lot of you guys have reported a lot of sightings from Stockton Sandspit and other places, and even putting birds on. I think one of the ones from the university has gone down to Japan. He's got there before Chris and Liz. But anyway, So there's your details for that. And that's it. But there's some good news. This is the biggest tidal flats in the world. And just recently, a couple of years ago, China and the Republic of Korea put forward huge areas of tidal flats as the World Heritage Site. And that's, as I say, due to the current governments, particularly in China. And this is the Chinese celebrating their World Heritage Site, and you'll see. That's it. Thank you.
You through the flight paths up pretty well straight lines. Like, that's a difficult thing to do.
Well,
So how do they actually navigate?
there's a lot of controversy over that, and I've been involved in bird research, I think, since 1960 or even a few years before that. And a lot of people recommend they have follow magnetic fields and such like this, and don't use navigation of the celestial things. But I was up on islands in 1960, and we get a lot of birds flying over at night. You can hear them on migration, but you can never see them. And on a starry night, we had a lighthouse on the island, and an overcast night, they're attracted to the lighthouse. And we'd be up there trying to catch them, mainly to trap them to ban them, but also to keep them away from the light and bashing themselves against the light. The next day, all the bush would be heaving with migratory birds resting after that night. If they were following a magnetic field, they wouldn't do that, would they?
You wouldn't think so.
No. So there's a lot of that. I'm not saying there's nothing about that at all, because they've got senses that we can't even imagine. So, and of course, you're moving, you're not going straight, you might be flying a straight line, but you're moving with the weather as you go along. And there's, I haven't got it here, but I had some image of the birds coming up, leaving the Yellow Sea, and just off East Russia, they turned back and went to the east coast of Russia. Stopped and then continued. It was a mystery until you look at the weather pattern. They knew they weren't making headway, and they had a rest and went back.
So they sometimes
Yes.
sometimes rest at night. Are you saying it's a non-stop flight? But are you saying sometimes they will rest at night?
You mean rest mentally, obviously?
No, physically. You said they were in the trees there near the lighthouse. Did you say?
Oh no, that's not shorebirds.
Oh.
These are little woodland birds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry,
So
you
the ones on the flight, the godwits, don't
No.
day and night. It's just
No, they're stop, can't swim. There are some birds that actually stop off at Pacific Islands, and the golden plover and turnstones do that. Now they can feed on reefs, but godwits and others can't. So so the smaller birds do that. They're similar to the smaller hops. But we did a lot of geolocated work years ago and found that they stopped into some of the Pacific Islands on the way. Yes.
Phil, to what degree do the birds rely on suitable prevailing winds for their migration?
Yeah, okay, this is a thing to watch out for. You're a bit late now because most of them are gone. But just getting close to time to leave, you'll see the birds a lot more active and vocal. And they're sort of getting themselves ready for flight, for taking off. And you'll get them all excited, and in some cases you'll see them fly off and back down again. If the conditions aren't right, they won't go. So they're waiting for the right conditions. And once you've got especially to get you off at altitude, you need a good weather. Otherwise, yeah, you don't go. You just wait.
Do they leave at the same, like, very precise time of year for their migrations?
Not that precise, because you've got lots of different birds and the conditions for the birds, but they do, yeah, pretty well. And in North West Australia, there's been a lot of studies, people working on the ground with them and watching them off, taking off and arriving back. And when they start taking off, then you've got a huge proportion of the birds will go then, when you've got this window. And then you can see them up. They used to pick them up on radar. There's ghosts going through there. And so once they're going, they get the right altitude and they go. Once up to that altitude and the V formation, you know they're on the way.
Do they use jet streams?
Not mentally, I suppose, but if they're available, yes. And I don't know to what extent in that period of year, time of year, we haven't studied that out of detail to see. I mean, obviously it would help you a lot, wouldn't it?
And the wind changes on, I mean, if you look at how air balloons move around, the wind changes
Yeah.
as you go up.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily what the ground conditions are.
No, but at high altitudes, they're a bit more stable than they are on the ground. At 3 to 5 kilometres high, you've got a fairly quiet period to fly along there. Okay.
How long is the flight from the tundra back to Australia? How many days was that?
From where to where?
From the tundra back to Australia?
Oh, that's
9, I think it was, wasn't it?
9 days, a bit longer, but it's single flight, yes. So, you better put a lot of weight on before you leave, mate. Here's more sandwiches.
Is there a reason why they go from Australia to the LOC and then across to the tundra, and then straight from the tundra back to Australia and not back the other way?
Yeah, because on your way north, you have to stop to refuel.
Yeah.
And that's at the Yellow Sea where they stop. After 5 or 6 weeks, they'll stop there to put on that fat they've used on that 10,000 kilometre flight, and to have the fat reserves in the breeding grounds. It's no good arriving there with an empty tank, because you've got to, the males are sort of territories, the females will lay eggs from all those resources, and they're pretty depleted by the end of the breeding season. That's why the females leave first and leave the males to look after the chicks, because they're the ones that need more reserves than the males. So they'll go off and they'll probably fatten up on the tidal flats because they didn't have much to eat there. And once they're ready to go, they head across the Pacific, which in this case is back across because they've been there before. Then the males go down to the coast with the juveniles, and they can feed it quicker than the juveniles, and then lead off, and then the juveniles, when they've got this pang to go, follow on, and there's this biggest ocean in the world.